Well, hello out there, and hello to the little squirrel whom I'm about to respond to. For those of you that don't know, this is Foamy the Squirrel. Now, let me put up front the same thing that everybody puts up front. Don't be so angry at Foamy the Squirrel, especially since he's just an animated little squirrel. But we all know that that's not how people think, is it? Of course, you'll have to get your feels out. And I understand that in an age of nobody feeling like they're listened to, that everybody wants to get their feelings out, everybody wants to get heard. Well, I'll tell you what, rather than going to Foamy the Squirrel and letting him know whatever angry idea you might have, why don't you just put those thoughts down in the comments, because that's where they belong. I'm not normally one to ask about comments because I really don't give a fuck what any of you think, but this time I'm going to say it. Put your thoughts in the comments that you might have towards Foamy the Squirrel and what I'm about to say to what Foamy the Squirrel has recently put out. And yes, I know he is a cartoon character, but being a cartoon character does not make what he says any less important. I'm a person that stands by my words. People like to say consider the source. Well, consider the source only goes so far. You have to pay attention to what's actually being said. Or, as I always put to my students, you pay attention to what's being said, how it's being said, and what's not being said. Because if you want to talk about debating ideas, then debate the ideas, not the people. So let's talk about some of the things that Foamy has said in this video. The video called Trapped by Stupids in the Mental Zombie Apocalypse. I guess I'll just have to make a parody title for this video. Foamy talks about people doing the right thing and people acting for the greater good. Well, tell me, what is the right thing? What is the greater good? Now, I'm sure many of us would agree on what those things are. I mean, because they're purely subjective, and we all live in a somewhat hive mind culture with ideas of what we want, right? General ideas. We want a brighter future, prosperity. We want wellness for our children, and so forth. And usually, we just disagree on the route to get there. So this brings an interesting question to what Foamy has to say. What is the right thing and what is the greater good? Just something to think about. Foamy also says that people didn't worry about medical science. It's very interesting. How do you know that, Foamy? How do you know that people didn't worry about medical science? That's a very broad generalization. Is it because what you heard is that people didn't worry about medical science? So you're going to believe what you've heard over and over again? Or are you going to question things? I mean, let's talk about it. What is science? Well, science is questioning things. So if you're listening, you're not questioning. If you're listening, you're not questioning, although that sounds kind of weird. But if you're only sitting there saying, yep, okay, I believe you, and you're not ever asking a question, well, that's not very scientific now, is it? Science is founded on questions. I mean, I can agree with Foamy that listening to misinformation is killing people and businesses, and people are being too self-righteous, but what is the misinformation? How are you going to find out what's information if you don't ask questions, if you don't look deeper, if you just sit there and do as you're told? I mean, Foamy likes to talk a lot about people thinking for themselves, but then he turns around and says, listen to the information. What is the information? Listen to the science. Well, I can tell you I've studied science. I trust science very much. I trust it so much that I've studied it for many, many years of my life. And the one thing that science has taught me more than most other things is don't trust people. Because people lie, people have agendas. People want something from you, and they want something over you. So what does the science actually say? I mean, Foamy thinks that it should only have taken 2 months for this virus to have not been a problem anymore. I'd be interested in the science behind that. I'd be interested in the factual evidence that Foamy could present, where he gets any kind of statistical data. Or is he just listening to people? It's interesting whenever people say think for yourselves, but then they instantly revert to that Milgram obsequiousness of listen to those who have authority so that you can think for yourselves. Kind of a double standard, don't you think? Foamy also says that people wouldn't take vaccine even if it had 0 side effects. Well, I got news for you, Foamy. There's never such a thing as 0 side effects. That's just the way life is. Every single action has its consequences. There are things that cause benefit and there are things that cause detriment, and that is just the nature of life. For myself, I remember when I was in the military and I had to take the flu shot, although it was a nose swab of some sort, and I became so sick afterwards because there's never such a thing as 0 side effects. There's many people that suffer all kinds of permanent conditions because of side effects. Sometimes people suffer temporary conditions because of side effects. And for me personally, having to rely on a vaccine, well, that kind of negates the whole human existence, doesn't it? Well, I wouldn't say negates the whole human existence because it does incorporate human ingenuity. However, we do have human bodies. We do make antibodies. We do have immune defense systems. And ultimately, whether or not you take a vaccine or whatever actions you take regarding some sickness, it's all a statistics game. That's all it can be. That's all it ever will be. Which one are you willing to gamble on, the more favorable outcome? But Foamy wants to talk about science. Well, the great thing about science is that any experiment in science is one that any person can do. You just have to follow the rubric. You just have to follow procedure. You just have to make sure the conditions are the same. So Foamy wants to talk about science. Let's talk about science. Here's a little science experiment you can do at home. This is not just for Foamy, but this is for all of you as well. For those of you that think wearing a mask is so important, well, I invite you to perform this little science experiment. Put on your mask. Put on your mask right now. I'll wait. No, I won't. Pause the video if you want me to wait. Fuck off. Put on your mask right now. Now take a pair of glasses. It can be any glasses. Reading glasses, eyeglasses, sunglasses, whatever. And start breathing through the mask to your glasses. Well, you want to breathe heavily because, make sure you have that temperature difference. And if your glasses fog up, well, then your mask doesn't really do shit. Oh, but if your glass doesn't fog up, well, wear them. And once again, breathe heavy. And if your glasses fog up, then once again, they don't do shit. Again, I talked about the other day what we refer to in science. I know I'm stumbling on my words. Shut the fuck up. What we refer to in science as negligible effects. And wearing a mask is a negligible effect. Oh, but why do they wear masks in things like surgery? Well, that's because masks are PPE. Masks are meant to prevent the nurses and surgeons from getting sick in case whatever patient they're operating on all of a sudden has a little fluid packet that likes to burst. And it'll prevent the transmission of bloodborne diseases by entering through the mouth and the glasses, or in the mouth and the eyes. So that's why they wear glasses, safety glasses as well. So yes, let us talk about the science. Let us practice science. I'm all for everybody practicing science. Ask the questions. Listen and ask. Listen and ask. Study. Learn. And test. Because if you can't perform a test on your own, then it's just not science.